Hey, hey.
Hey,
Welcome to the Brian and Kristen podcast. I'm Brian.
and I'm Kristen.
And Kristen, you had a pretty busy week. You want to kind of recap for us what you did over the last week?
Yeah, so the last time I said I had just gone to Puerto Rico to get my passport so I could go to London. So I had to drive to Orlando and flew overnight and arrived in London. Well, actually, yeah, I went outside of London by about an hour and a half and went to a college for mediumship. So spent the last week, 12-hour days doing mediumship with a lot of really talented people.
Cool. Sounds fun. You got to stay in a castle and
Got to stay in this really old castle, and it was a bit creepy, actually. The first night I could hardly sleep because it just, I don't know, I was like mom, had like claustrophobia.
okay.
But no, it was a really good time. Lots of very interesting people. I got lots of invites to go back to Europe and hang out with some of the different people I met. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. I have to go. I've been to London once and it was pretty fun. So,
Yeah. I went into London on like I guess it was Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. And where I went to eat, some woman was getting her somebody tried to steal some lady's phone like while I was in there. It was pretty crazy. But yeah,
man, that's nuts.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good. I spent my time in Austin, Texas, basic regular week, out there hustling comedy shows and whatnot. And so, but I'm relieved to be back home. And was just, how when you travel, it just kind of wears on you after, or at least that trip out there just made me tired as heck.
Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, because all the moving around and
Yeah, especially when you're going from one place, when you're sleeping at one place and another place the next day, and another place the next day. At least when you're like kind of set in a place, it's like a little better, you know.
yeah.
Um, so I'm happy, but we got a great question from Pamela, Ohio, who I met in Toledo, Ohio, back in 20, I think it was 18 or so when I first hurt my fingers. It was the first show I did after being hurt, and we've been friends ever since, mainly through the internet. We've been able to stay in touch, and she has a great question that we're going to start the show off with today. And it is, do you think growing up in a small community made you more versatile and taught you how to have common sense? I don't know if I have either one of those things. I'm going to take that as a compliment and say I do.
Or maybe she wants you to admit you don't. No.
Yeah, that would have common sense. If I admit I don't have common sense, that would be common sense.
Yeah. That's so funny because in this mediumship class all week, the professor was like, the instructor kept saying, how come some of you just have no common sense? You just need to be using common sense. So that's so funny that that's what she was saying. And I think that's true. Sometimes you can just overanalyze and forget to like, where's the common sense sometimes?
Yeah. I don't know if you ever did you probably didn't take shop class in school, did you? No.
No, never
Okay.
be.
Because we had shop class and our teacher was Mr. Shaw. And on the first day, one of the things he said is, you better go in this class, you're going to need some common sense. So if you don't have any, go to the dollar store and ask to buy some common sense.
Oh, it's that cheap, like $1?
Yeah.
It's cheap and people still don't have it.
So, but I do think, well, let's think about the little town we grew up in. So there is good and bad about little town, right? But I do think it does, as far as that, you got to be more practical in a common in as far as being in a little town, right? People aren't going to let you get away with kind of outlandish thoughts as much, right? They're going to call you out because when you live in a little town, everybody knows about your life, and so you can't be kind of ridiculous with your thoughts, right? If something ain't true, some of the stuff that the world is pushing right now, the people here like, oh god, like, although I did hear that there's a girl in the high school who thinks she's a cat, so we'll see how that goes.
I'm not sure that's common sense.
So like,
It was practical, right? The first part of the question, did that make you more practical?
versatile,
Oh,
versatile.
versatile. Well, I mean, I guess the cat's versatile.
But well, as far as versatile, I think that we learn a lot of stuff here. Like we were talking on the first podcast, I think about, there being pigs and stuff, the 4-H's and stuff like that. I think in a small town, it gives you an opportunity to uh, be versatile as far as the small town stuff, as far as like, mowing your lawn and taking care of the outside and knowing where things come from. But there's also the setback of not getting to be experienced to a lot of stuff, right? I mean, it's not like we have much theater or, there's a school play once a year, but I mean,
Yeah, that's yeah, that not really that out there. I would say
yeah.
though, with the versatile part though, I mean, I was thinking about this because there's opportunity for you to do more things because our classes were smaller. So for example, if you wanted to run for one of the class offices, you had more of an opportunity to actually be successful in that versus a school where there's, 500 kids per class. You might not think about doing that, or like playing sports and making the varsity teams, things like that. You could actually have an opportunity to get on one of those.
Yeah, that's a good point because you really could. It's like you said, the school, there's not that many kids, so everybody's kind of involved. And then with the sports, yeah, I mean, we have, the opportunity that we all kind of got to play and, they would do the best they could not to kick, cut anybody from the teams or whatever. So I think that yeah, there are, and the classes are smaller. All your classmates, I mean, I had 80 kids in my class since uh and it's pretty much the same kids since you're in kindergarten. And so I think that is definitely an advantage in a small town, that everybody, and also the fact that uh everybody knows you, so like for instance, when I had my paper out, and this was before cell phones, that if dad was looking for me, it was pretty easy to find, so you could go out. And I think we also had a better experience. I don't know, I can't compare it to other places, but as far as nature and being outside, I think a small town allows more um play as far as that's concerned, to be around.
Yeah, I was going to say, because obviously in larger cities, especially now, like, most kids aren't going outside for safety reasons or whatever else.
Yeah, we didn't really have. We
Um,
could just be outside and just go, and there's never really a too much of a fear of anything um happening. There's not like, because even people around here too, like when I first came back in 2020, I was walking up to our neighbor's Brian, another guy named Brian, his house. I was walking back and forth on the street, and then the other neighbors drove by to say, "Who is this?" I said, "I'm Swinehart." "Oh yeah, what you been? We haven't seen you." So we're just checking because we saw somebody walking to us. So there's kind of like that tightness of a community, which
right.
and I actually think that our education is kind of good because of that. Because I'm not saying it's the best in the world. We got a lot of, but at least the teachers were right there watching over us. And it's kind of like if a kid was having a problem, the teachers all would know. It's so small that you know even for instance, when dad was sick, but I was going to Pleasant Hill at the time, but in eighth grade, the teacher had all the kids write a get well card to him. you
Wow. I
know
didn't know that.
Yeah, so some of the kids still remember it. I was talking to one of my friends from Pleasant Hill the other day at the class reunion, and he was there because he married a girl from Covington, but went to Pleasant Hill, and so, "Oh, I remember when we did that."
Hmm.
So that's a small community. So I think that that's good, and I do think that some of the ridiculous stuff that's being pushed on the world, I do think that the smaller towns are the ones that are going to reject that and be like, no, it doesn't make any sense, and like, I mean, because they don't like the idea that there's a kid that thinks they're a cat, so that's it. They probably go buy her litter box. But
And I would understand the common sense part. Some of it's like you just have to learn how to work hard and do things. I mean, there's not a whole lot of other things you can be doing. I mean, you can't be out escaping everything. You have to work hard and do things around the house or, whatever the case may be, or in the small town too.
Yeah, I think that that definitely that I think there's a certain work ethic that comes from um a small town, especially when you're in the country, not like we were farmers or anything like that, but there's weeds, there's trees, dad was always planting trees. So you, even just by being around that, you learn how to do it without learning, the practical stuff. I mean, I'm by no means a good fisherman, but still we're around that, we understand uh kind of what it entails. And I think that being in the country and involved with stuff, we have a little more appreciation on animals, farm animals and stuff like that, where I kind of feel like when you're in the city, people in the city, I don't know, didn't grow up in the city, but from my experience in California, the people in the city just have food there on their table with not much of a thought of how it got there. Right.
Yeah.
Where, pretty much every kid in our school could probably, whether they're, even if they're not farm kids, they could walk through what all happened to get that food on your table. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a dang cornfield outside of our high school. So
Right. But I do think you're right though on a bit of the the lack of arts and things, other things that you miss out on, right? Some people don't even get to venture outside of the state, or even the small town. So I look at like just my trip. I literally got back last night from England, and I have enough common sense to venture around a large city that I've never been in by myself, so that there's also that. And I would imagine some of the common sense I got from home and also just knowing how to get around in a big city, some people would miss out on that experience. And for me, it's kind of, it's very interesting to interact with people from other parts of the world and just see how they do things. And of course, I was, I had a great time, but I was also happy to be back. So I think that sometimes you get to go other places and experience that, but then also appreciate, where you came from. And I always find myself being grateful that I grew up in a small town because of having like just I don't know, it just feels like a very down to earth approach.
yeah, I think the down to earth for sure. And I do think that the one of the setbacks, I guess, would be a small town is the limited beliefs, the limited mindset. Like I know when I left for California, everybody thought I'd be back because who's going to go out there and make it? Right. It's
Mhm.
almost that people where they're from, they don't think anybody can do anything because they're from there.
Right.
It's kind of like, oh, well, yeah, but you're from here. You can't do that. You're from here. Well, somebody from somewhere is going to do it. Why not me?
Yeah.
Not me. I'm from here. Yeah, I should be the one to make it because I'm from a town of only 2,000 people. Not a lot of people get to experience a person from a town of 2,000 people, right? Where if somebody's from New York or bigger city, they've kind of been around people or seen, that it can be done.
Yeah.
Say,
Right. Yeah. Because it's that mentality of like, well, no one here is ever going to make it because nobody ever has, or they won't ever. And then also people actually taking the chance to do it, right? Like, what's the worst thing if you go out and fail and come back? Like, but at least you had the opportunity to see what that was like.
yeah,
So, and I also think that just coming from a smaller upbringing and then going into places like larger cities is that people can tell that we're different in the sense of like, I mean, somewhat different, like just having more of I don't know, I don't know if I want to call it humble beginnings, but like sometimes people will be like, "You're not from here, are you?" I'm like, "No, no," but of course I'm the one that wouldn't expect anybody to steal a cell phone in a restaurant either. So that I'm like, "Oh God, that could have been me. I wouldn't have even known what to do."
yeah, yeah. Because you can be a little naive when you're from a little town because it's just safer, right? It's just certain
Hmm.
things. I mean, there can be stuff that happens that's not good, but generally speaking, we're not dealing with a lot of crazy stuff. We don't see a lot of crazy stuff, right? It's kind of like almost like Groundhog Day, like through town, it's always the same amount of traffic, even at 5 p.m. There might be
I
like,
know. I laugh when mom's like, the traffic's getting really busy. I'm like, the traffic? What are you talking about?
it's three cars instead of the normal one. Like,
Yeah, like I didn't even notice the traffic.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that was a good question from Pamela, Ohio. If you guys have questions, let us know, and we're going to prepare ourselves because we already have been going for 15 minutes here, and next week we got a friend, my friend George from California. Great guy. He's one of the guys who listened to my podcast and keeps me going with podcasting, and he was excited that we're doing podcasts. He got a question that I think we need another episode to handle the whole question because it's a good one. He says, "How many Kristens would it take to pin one Brian?" so, so give you time to think about it. If anybody's, if anybody
Yeah,
has an answer for that, what you think, feel free to leave it in the comments now. And we're putting the podcast now. We got it on Facebook, YouTube, and I figured out, I think, how to do it correctly on Anchor, which means it should be out on Spotify and all those other places if I did it correctly. So if you guys hear it on one of those platforms, let me know that, because that means I figured out how to take a video and put the audio into the thing. It was a little complicated for me, but I think I figured it out.
yeah, I wouldn't have even attempted it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So, but that would be great if we can be heard on, Spotify and all those other places. Um, and we're having a lot of fun doing these podcasts. So we love these questions, and getting the questions lets us know that people are actually watching or listening. And
yeah,
but no, it's a good way to catch up for us anyways, and document kind of what's our lives are at the time. And
yeah. Thanks, Pamela, Ohio, for the question.
yeah. And next week, how many Kristens would it take to pin one Brian? It gives you a week to think about it, Kristen.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to need every minute of that.
I mean, because you said, I still, I still watch pro wrestling, especially like the 80s and 90s wrestlers. And I think about all the drama I put you through, and I'd be jumping off the couch.
It's amazing I'm still standing to even be here to answer the question, honestly.
No, but I was always wrestling. Now, do you remember one year I got my head? We'll finish on this. When I got my head sliced open, though, when I was wrestling Rob at Thanksgiving.
I do remember that.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was pretty traumatic. I wonder what kind of lifelong damage that did to me, because I was wrestling one of our cousins at my grandma's house, and I was on top of him, but he put his feet in the middle of my chest, and he kicked me off, and my head hit the side of a door, and I think I had to get, I know I got stitches. I think it was 5 or 6 stitches, and I just remember the blood gushing, and I think was dad driving and mom was in the back putting a cloth over my head or something like that. But you think that would have got me to stop wrestling, but no.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, well, those were great questions, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.